the All-Star break winding down, here's a few hitters I look to buy and trade for on the All-Star break here. The first guy, Salvador Perez of the Kansas City Royals. So Salvador Perez, the first month of the season, he got off to a hot start, but he's really struggling now over the last month and a half on the year. 15 home runs, 40 RBIs, 37 runs scored, a 246 average, and a 289 on base. But the last month, like I mentioned, 2 home runs, 4 RBIs, 7 runs scored, a 171 average, and a 236 on base. So right now, the power numbers have dropped drastically here for Salvador Perez. But like I said, this guy's got legit power, and we've seen it before. Him hit 40 home runs a few years ago, and even last season, not playing totally the full year, 23 home runs, 76 RBI. So he's pretty much on that pace like he was last season, and to get that from a catcher is very solid. But right now, well, he hasn't done much, like I said, lately is Salvador Perez. This is a time to buy him this week. July 4th at the Twins 0 for 3. July 5th at the Twins 0 for 3. July 6th at the Guardians 1 for 4. July 7th at the Guardians 0 for 3. At July 9th at the Guardians 1 for 3 with a run. So right now the power hasn't been there. Driving in runs hasn't been there. And I know he's in a very weak lineup with the Kansas City Royals with no protection or great hitters around them. So right now, while the numbers have dropped off, even though we know the track record of Salvador Perez, I think this break's going to help him. And he's going to be a hitter that breaks out a little bit in the second half. And right now, we're here to buy while he pretty much hasn't done much in the last month. The next hitter, Reynolds of the Pittsburgh Pirates. So Reynolds had some season last year for the Pirates, and that gave him a huge contract extension, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, in Pirate history. But on the season, it's been a struggle for Reynolds, who was a second, third rounder in most fantasy leagues. 9 home runs, 42 RBIs, 40 runs scored, 8 stolen bases, a 265 average, and a 334 on base. But the last month of the season for him as well, we haven't seen much. 2 home runs, 4 RBIs, 6 runs scored, a 203 average, and a 266 on base here for Reynolds. So Reynolds last season definitely could have been fluky, 27 home runs and the 62 RBIs with 7 stolen bases, but I don't think it was, to be honest. And this Pirate team was a decent first half for them. Obviously, they started off the year on fire and then cooled off a little bit, but they still got an outside shot in the wild card right now, 8 games out. And Reynolds, he's just going to have to step it up. July 4th at the Dodgers, 2 for 5 a rib. July 5th at the Dodgers, 1 for 4 with a homer. July 6th at the Dodgers, 0 for 4. July 7th at the D-backs, 0 for 4. July 8th at the D-backs, 1 for 4. And July 9th at the D-backs, 1 for 4. So pretty much 1 for 4 ball games with not much to it, with only 1 home run for Reynolds in the last 2 weeks. So right now, while he's struggling, and last season he had a great year for the Pirates and a breakout year. We'll see if he could bounce back in the second half. And right now, to be honest, I don't think you got to give up much. Maybe a mid-starting pitcher in a deal to get Reynolds on your team, because I'm sure Reynolds owners, they're not happy with the production and expecting much more out of him. The next hitter is Bregman of the Houston Astros. So Bregman, he's been a hit-or-miss season for fantasy owners. On the year, 12 home runs, 56 RBIs, 50 runs scored, a 240 average, and a 338 on base. So his numbers are pretty much on par like they were last season, surprisingly, even though Bregman hasn't made a huge impact for fantasy baseball owners. But the 56 RBIs is definitely solid. Batting average, yes, it's a little down last year, finishing at 259. This year, 240 average. But everything else is pretty much on line like it was last season. With the home runs, he has 12. Last season, 23. And right now, the last couple weeks, though, he's definitely struggling. 1 home run, 7 RBIs, 7 runs scored, a 182 average, and a 321 on base. So he's still drawing walks. He's still getting that on-base percentage up. And it's just about the power coming around and getting better opportunities to drive in runs, because this Astro team, they've been struggling a little bit over the last couple weeks, especially losing 3 out of 4 before the break. So the last few games here for Bregman: July 4th versus the Rockies, 0 for 4 run. July 5th versus the Rockies, 0 for 2. July 6th versus the Mariners, 1 for 4. July 7th versus the Mariners, 1 for 3 with a rib. July 8th versus the Mariners, 1 for 3 in RBI. And July 9th versus the Mariners, 0 for 4 in that ball game. So right now, while Bregman's numbers have been stagnant over the last couple weeks here, he's a player I would go out there and buy. And this Astro team, we know the history. They always make deep playoff runs over the last 6 or 7 seasons, and guys like Bregman have come through more times than not. So right now, like I said, while he hasn't done much over the last couple weeks, you definitely could get him on a discount this week. I think is Bregman. The next hitter is Nolan Gorman of the St. Louis Cardinals. So this Cardinals team, one of the worst teams this season in the National League. And you figure with all those big-time hitters, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, signing Contreras, Tyrell Neal for a bounce back, you figured, and Jordan Walker, one of the top prospects in Major League Baseball, that this team would be a good team this season. But that hasn't been the case. And now it looks like they're going to sell at the trade deadline. Obviously, is a St. Louis Cardinal team. And this year, Gorman's having a solid year in terms of power on the year, but everything else really has been much from on the year. 17 home runs, 52 RBIs, 36 runs scored, 4 stolen bases, a 229 average, and a 314 on base. And in the last month of the season, he's been non-existent for fantasy owners. 2 home runs, 6 RBIs, 10 runs scored, a 151 average, and a 244 on base. But obviously, if this Cardinal team's selling at the deadline, which approaches August 1st, he's going to play every day here, Gorman. We know he don't play versus lefties, and we know they give him playing time only 5 days a week right now, where they got a couple players that can play different positions. We know Gorman's a second and third base. Usually he plays for this Cardinal team. So July 5th at the Marlins, 1 for 3, a homer, 2 ribs. July 6th versus Miami, 2 for 3, a run and a rib. July 7th at the White Sox, 1 for 5. July 8th at the White Sox, 0 for 4 with a run. And July 9th at the White Sox, 0 for 4 with a run. So the strikeout rate definitely is alarming, though, for Nolan Gorman. 99 strikeouts and 275 at-bats this season. Last season, he had 103 Ks and 283 at-bats. So right now, just right around the same K rate for Gorman, but the power's up a little bit this season. And like I said, he's going to be playing every day, no doubt, if they trade most of their players at the deadline. So right now, if he gets in there versus lefties, gets an everyday opportunity and qualifies at a weak second base position, is Gorman. He's definitely a hitter I'd look to buy this week, because we've seen it early in the year. When he could go on a tear, he could hit 10 home runs in a month and really help your fantasy team. But right now, while he hasn't done much over the last month of the season, he's a perfect buy low guy, and he's even available on waiver wires in 37% of fantasy leagues. And the fifth and final hitter I look to buy and trade for this week's Kyle Schwarber of the Philadelphia Phillies. So Schwarber, he got a little hot in the middle of June to July, and then he's tailed off a little bit. But on the season, the power numbers are still there. 22 home runs, 49 RBIs, 52 runs scored, a 184 average, and a 313 on base. So last season, he did finish the year 218. And it's even going to be tough, I think, for Schwarber to finish the year in 210s to the 220 range. But the power's still legit. 22 home runs. Last year hit 46. I could see him finish the year with about 40 home runs. And he's another player just like Gorman, where when he gets hot, he can hit 12 to 13 home runs in a month. So the last couple weeks here for Schwarber, numbers right around the season average. 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 7 runs scored, a 180 average, and a 212 on base. So this Philadelphia Philly team had a pretty decent first half of the season. Right now, the third wild card in the National League, but I think they're going to need Schwarber to step up and get things going, and he's very capable of doing it, is Schwarber. This time off definitely can help him right now, and he opens up a series back in Philly versus San Diego Padres, where their pitching staff has been hit or miss as well this season. July 4th at Tampa, 1 for 4 run. July 5th at Tampa, 0 for 6. July 6th at Tampa, 2 for 5 a rib. July 7th in Miami, 1 for 5. July 8th at the Marlins, 0 for 4 rib. And July 9th at the Marlins, 0 for 4. So right now, well, he really hasn't done much over the last few weeks of Schwarber. And to begin with, his batting average is below the Mendoza line. This is a time to buy him, because Schwarber, we saw him in the playoffs, have a monster playoffs. And he's known as a second half guy and a clutch hitter as well, where I see him coming through and helping this Philly team make the playoffs this season. So right now, he's definitely a hitter I look to buy this week. So that's a few hitters I look to buy and trade for in the AllStar break here as it winds down with games resuming tomorrow of the fantasy baseball season.